What is going on, Pooj Crew? Packed episode for you today. We're back in the full swing of things with football season here. Jaguars, Steelers talk, some NFL talk, other storylines going on, but a packed video nonetheless. Stick around for it. If you'd rather listen on a podcast streaming platform, we're all over the place. Podcasts on Spotify, Apple, Google, iHeart, wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube for the video element where you can see this beautiful group of men. Look at these guys back for episode 2 of the 2022 season. We have DJ Leggett, Big Mooch, and Kit Kat, of course, joining us to talk Jags Steelers. Gentlemen, how are we doing today?
Doing good, getting closer to, actual regular season. So anytime we're counting down is getting good.
It's getting there. I mean, what is it? September 11th is the first game. We have one more preseason game. So we're about to crack. It's probably 20 days from now, 21 days. So
thank God.
What's up?
I said, thank God, because at this point, like, you've seen the last bit of football that's going to be as close as you're going to get to preseason, because next week is not going to be much of anything, I feel.
Yeah,
Nobody's
week
going to be playing.
Next week, Sam, I think you're muted, by the way.
You get college.
I just unmuted you.
College football.
College is that nice stopgap.
Yeah.
Yeah, college we have coming up. I think they start playing Saturday, so coming up here on the 27th, week 0, which I think is just dumb. Like, just call it week 1, but week 0 because they want to keep week 1 as the prestigious week 1. But nonetheless, college football, Hawaii and Vanderbilt, that'll be a fun week 1 game. But there's other week 1 games too for college football. But yeah, it's a good stopgap. Just kind of get the juices flowing. I know UCF opens up on September 1st, so we're excited for that. Even though it's against South Carolina Upstate. So it'll just be good to get back to a stadium to see a game, and go into the preseason games is fun, but obviously not up to the level of a regular season environment. But guys, Jags Steelers, Jags fall 16-15 in the week 2 of the preseason on a last-second missed field goal that just looked terrible. Granted, 57-yarder. But the Jags just were never able to put the nail in the coffin, it felt like.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, from start to finish, it was kind of that was probably a great way to put it, not put the nail in the coffin, because when the starters came out, I felt there was a lot of good ball movement, a lot of getting down the field and making some plays, but it didn't seem like we were able to close those drives with the points we wanted. Of course, like, getting field goals and getting points on the board is nice, but you really want to close those out with touchdowns, and when you get to the red zone, convert to touchdowns. But I'm hoping that everything kind of works its way out toward the regular season and the playbook really opens up, because I don't think they want to show too much in these early games of what they're really working on. But ball movement and just making some plays downfield, I would say that's a plus for what we saw against the Steelers.
I mean, if you were looking at these stats, I'll just read these off real quick. Jaguars 367 total yards to 279 for the Steelers. Time of possession 34-21 in favor of the Jags. 34 minutes and 21 seconds, that is, in favor of the Jags. But going into halftime, the Jags had 66% of the time of possession. I think they had 20 minutes versus 10 to the Steelers, and we were losing. Like, we were down 7-6 at halftime. And that's just unacceptable. Like, I love this podcast, and I love being optimistic and positive. Sam brought some reality into it last week with the Trevor Lawrence flaws, which I think we saw again, and I'll kind of let Sam get back into that as well. But it's one of those things where realistically the team was controlling the clock. They were moving the ball. They just are not able to convert and put up points. And that in the preseason, you see the ball movement and you're like, okay, that's fine. It's nice to see, it's refreshing to see. But come the regular season, we're gonna be frustrated as all get out if we're having 4 or 5 field goal attempts a game.
Yeah, especially when you don't have a kicker on the team. I mean, it was just like, so what happened is that Matt, and he's been on the podcast, he was in the middle of a fantasy draft, and he's like, oh snap, Trevor Lawrence is still on the board. And I was just like, dude, look at the scoreboard. Like, it's halftime and we have 6 points. Like, this is a terrible pick. Like, we're not gonna be throwing. I mean, if preseason any indication of what happens in the regular season, then like, who's gonna be scoring touchdowns? That's why I was like, James Robinson is so important to get back. He can take that ball from the 10-yard line in the red zone and just score. And apparently that's what happened against the Falcons in practice, like today. They handed the ball off, makes his way into the end zone from 10 yards out. So like he's a super important piece to get back. But it's like, Trevor, like, I get it. You're making, you're moving drives, you're getting first downs, but like, where's the anger and the drive to get into the end zone, So I'd like to see somebody emerge, maybe Evan Ingram or somebody, but right now it was pretty boring first half, in my opinion.
Spot on, Sam. Luke, would you say that the Jaguars stalling in the red zone is pretty comparable to a young offense, young quarterback, new system across the league? Or do you think this is strictly, a Jaguar problem? Or are we as fans blowing it up as a bigger issue than it is? Or is this normal to see amongst teams at the level at which the Jags are currently at?
I mean, I think it's a team-specific thing, because if you take a look at teams that had a year 2 quarterback, Justin Herbert, when he had his amazing year, you had, Lamar Jackson, I think in his second or third year was MVP. It's not because there's a young quarterback and it's in his second year. That's usually the year they break out and they let you know if they're a stud or not. But if you look at Carson Wentz on the Commanders, they have an old team. It's not like the veteran leadership is going to make their team any better. I think it's team specific. We need to figure out how to get in the end zone, because if you score 5 touchdowns versus 5 field goals, it's a 20-point difference, and we can't have that.
Jacob, what about you? Team specific issue, or is this an issue that we shouldn't be too worried about? It's more of a league-wide young quarterback, new offense issue.
The way that I look at it, and it's kind of tough because you really don't know what's going on behind closed doors. And, I've not been in an NFL organization, obviously. But I like to think that, not everything is shown. Not all of your cards are shown in the preseason. And, when it comes to, like, converting those drives, like, we're trying to get through, getting some live reps. We're trying to not get our players hurt doing too much. We're not trying to show our hand too much of what we're going to do in the regular season. But the one thing I know of Doug Peterson, and it's kind of like to our detriment from years past, 2017 specifically, is that Doug Peterson's an aggressive coach. The reason that we lost to the Patriots in that AFC Championship game is because we took our foot off the pedal. Doug Peterson won the Super Bowl against them because he kept his foot on the gas. And so, like, when I see this in the preseason, I am hesitant to really take it either way, because I need to see what he does in the regular season once we have all of our players. You mentioned James Robinson. We're missing him. That's going to be a key cog in the offense. The playmaking, the play calling, I should say, should look different. I imagine there's a lot on the table that we have not seen. But then also the aggressiveness. Like, are we going to, try to go for this 4th and 2 or 4th and 5, or are we going to try to push past midfield, rather than punting the ball? Maybe we're at the 40-yard line on the opposite end and we feel like, hey, why punt when we can go for this? And if not, they're still on the opposite end of the field. I just need to see Doug Peterson because he's experienced. He's done it at the highest level. And I trust him going into the regular season in an unknown situation much more than we trusted Urban Meyer going into last season into an unknown situation. So I'm hesitant to get too worried about it. I think Trevor Lawrence is going to be great, and I think Doug Peterson is going to put him in the best position possible to be great.
Yeah, no, I like that. Sam, I want to pull you in here real quick. You kind of diagnosed the issue as being James Robinson related, almost isolated to James Robinson. You're making me believe if James Robinson comes back, the red zone conversion rate is going to go up by 40% from whatever it is.
You guys, do you remember, like, in fantasy football, we would have 13 points or like 14 points, and James Robinson would have like 22 points in fantasy just because you hand him the ball and he's going to score the touchdown. Like, it was a beautiful thing. I think we all like forgot, I guess, about it, but you can count me as the analyst that didn't forget about this guy, that he has the vision and the burst to get into the end zone, which is what we need. I mean, you can hand it to ETN, but once you get like tight into that red zone, like, there's going to be 8 guys just waiting for him, and they're going to tackle him. So, I mean, team specific thing, I think, Jacob, there's a lot of like good things to what you said about that, but it's like maybe we're looking for someone else that we can trust to go to in the end zone, and it's like, I don't know. But I mean, that scheme play to Evan Ingram for a touchdown, 2 weeks ago was like great. This is a good scheme, and guys are going to be open. But like, let's see more of that. I get that he might be trying to hide it, but like, I like that. Let's keep it going. No need to push the panic button yet. I agree with that, but it's still kind of something to monitor because, like I said, it was boring, at least to me, watching that game. So,
but Sam, do you foresee a season rhythm where Travis Etienne becomes more effective in the red zone as James Robinson returns to full health, where maybe Travis Etienne isn't needed to run up the middle or find the holes between the tackles, but maybe he is used more as like a slot receiver or a scat back like we see from, maybe an Austin Eckler. And I don't want to sit here and overvalue Travis Etienne as an Austin Eckler type player, but I also don't want to sit here and believe that Travis Etienne's ceiling is capped at a guy who can't convert in the red zone for a team when he was the 25th overall pick 2 years ago.
Right. I don't know. As far as a receiving back, I definitely don't think that Etienne is on the same level as, like Kamara and Eckler. Like, yeah, absolutely. Like, even saying that is ridiculous. But, like, people have kind of put him into this box like, oh, this guy's an elite receiving back. And it's like, yeah, he's good at receiving the ball, but, like, there was a red zone opportunity 2 weeks ago where Travis Etienne was in the flat, and we threw him the ball, and he flat out couldn't get it and get it in. So, I think we're all like taking Etienne and we're kind of putting him like in this box of what kind of player he is, but it's like, maybe he's not as the receiving back that we all want, or not want, but like is as elite as almost fantasy football community is putting him and as Jaguar fans in general are putting him. Maybe we need to pump the brakes on him a little bit as far as like an elite receiving back, but I still think he's a good player and absolutely he's going to get a lot of usage this year. But as far as like, have we really seen it out of him like yet? I don't know. Absolutely not. So
yeah, I agree with what Sam said. I just want to say the one benefit of the doubt I will give Travis Etienne is that he came off of a year of no play, and so I've been a little underwhelmed at times with him just because I'm like, I'm expecting these crazy, break through the line and break for a long kind of touchdown runs like we saw him do in college. We haven't seen that. But I see the burst, and I'm just hoping that what he's doing is shaking off rust from not playing in like actual games for a year. And practice reps are only going to do so much for you. So I'm hesitant, like Sam is. I'm just hoping for the best. But yeah, I think that's why James Robinson is very important coming up, and I think that'll only help Etienne.
All right, my last question on James Robinson, because I, like many of you, are equally as excited to see him come back and see his return, especially so quickly after an injury, which I feel like, first of all, before we get to this, I feel like the returning quickly after an injury is becoming more of a norm than it is an outlier, because we've seen players now doing this for the last 3 or 4 years, which congrats to him. It's great that he's making a full recovery and returning. But I think it's time we just realize that recovery times are changing as modern medicine and technology and training is also changing, because there was a time where ACL tears, you wouldn't see a player come back. Like, that was the end of his career. And then it slowly became, okay, Adrian Peterson recovered from one like in 10 months and was back to full strength by 2012. So I think with James Robinson too, it excites me for his return. I think it's great that his recovery has been so quick, because when that injury happened, I was like, he's going to be out for a majority of the next season. And now he's, as Sam mentioned, taking practice snaps against the Falcons, which you would not expect for a player that's on a snap count kind of thing. For each of you, my question about James Robinson, and I'll start with Sam because he's the James Robinson truther. How many wins does James Robinson add to this team based on your thoughts on him?
I mean, he's scored. We got to go back and see like how many points this guy has scored, like total like percentage of team points. No kickers. Total of like offensive touchdowns like over the last few years, because I don't know, he was like our entire offense when in the Gardner Minshew era. blah, blah, blah. I get we won 2 games. So it's like, how many wins are you going to give this guy? But like there was games that he just went out and won us the game. So, I mean, what, you're going to put at least 2 for him? Like at least 2 games with this guy back. Like,
yeah, no. And that's always a tough question to ask, especially in the preseason. And it's obviously more of a question that's easier to answer at the end of the season. But we're talking about how one-dimensional the offense looks once you get to the red zone. And once you bring him back, I mean, that's the difference in 3 or 4 games, in my opinion. I'm not guaranteeing 3 or 4 wins based on James Robinson, but if you can convert in the red zone, and James Robinson seems to be the reason why the team is able to, or lack thereof when he's not on the field, 3 or 4 victories there, because I think we've had about 10 red zone possessions in the last 2 weeks, and we've only gotten 4 touchdowns out of them, or 3 touchdowns out of them. That's a 30% clip. Like, that's not going to do the job during the regular season, especially when the other team is running it down your throat or moving the ball down your throat, and they're converting 60% of the time. They're going to win the game almost every time. So that's kind of my thought on it. But I will say the lack of red zone efficiency also translates to our defense, where our defense has put up 2 fantastic games, at least from the first team. And the defense deserves more backing than a 6-point offensive performance in the first half against the Steelers.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we get the ball back on a turnover, and we got to kick field goals. It's happened twice now. So it's like, yeah.
And I feel like – go for it, Luke.
I was going to say, is it too early to be very excited for our first-team defense? Because they've looked amazing. And that's without Devin Lloyd. Devin Lloyd hasn't been out there. We've missed Fotukasi. So, I mean, the first team looks really, really good. How high are our expectations for that first-team defense?
That D-line looks fire. That's about it for me. That D-line looks like once one of them gets going, the other guys start getting super hungry, and it's no stopping them after that. Like, Arden Key will bust one. And then, like, Walker's like, well, I'm not going to let this guy fucking just take all the glory. And then, like, you see Josh Allen come alive, and you see Smoot just coming in for the safety. It's like, it's beautiful to see. Smoot is a good player. And him being, like, the 4th or 5th best guy on that line is nice. So, and then the new guys coming in. I mean, the new D tackle from the Jets. Oh, he looks amazing too. So it's like, I don't know. That's the exciting part for me, is we're going to get a ton of sacks, a ton of pressures, and then that's going to open things up for our secondary to start making some plays on the back end.
You don't think the secondary looks good?
What's up?
You don't like Campbell and Griffin?
No, that's what I'm saying, is that these guys are good players, but it's like, if you give the quarterback all day to throw the ball, then obviously the guy's going to get open. It's the NFL. So it's like, and especially with Tyson Campbell, you kind of saw a little bit of that. Like, you give him all day to throw, and Tyson Campbell's going to be, chasing his guy down the field, and it's like, well, what the heck? So
I think that's the key.
I'm absolutely excited about them. That's
the key, what Sam said, though, with the pressure from the defensive line, because our success in 2017, top to bottom, that defense had playmakers at all 3 levels. But it really starts with the defensive line allowing for those back 2 levels at linebacker and secondary to make the plays, like the turnovers that they did. Of course, like, anybody can stick with a guy for so long or cover a guy for so long. But when you add that pressure and you make the quarterback make faster and less like calculated decisions, that's where we're talking like fumbles, or we're talking interceptions. And I think as long as we have the big group at the defensive line to aid that, I want to be just as hesitant as I am to say like the good things on the offense. I want to be hesitant to say the good things about the defense. But it does look good because of that main factor of the defensive line being, pumped up with a lot more like depth. Everyone's worried about depth. Everyone's talking about, oh yeah, as soon as our players get hurt, like, the depth doesn't look good on this team. Well, guess what? We're not going to have a line change like in hockey. One guy might go down, but the entirety of the defense, I think, has some pretty solid depth. But it starts with the defensive line and that pressure, Sam. I totally agree with that.
Yeah, and I like what I've seen on the D-line as well. Sorry, I was over here dealing with some charger issues, but the D-line has kind of put multiple schemes into the game, if that's the right way to say it. Like, we've seen, Trevon Walker come inside. into like, over the nose tackle almost, or over one of the guards. So
And Arden
you
Key.
can an Arden Key inside as well. And anytime, I guess this may be 2 years out of date, but anytime you see a guy with, the number 40 jersey or 40 on his jersey inside, he's an end inside rushing from the middle. So I like what I've seen there. But Luke, to kind of answer your question, my thoughts on that is I think what we've seen from the starting defense right now is the ceiling of the potential in the short term. Like I don't foresee them being this good and getting much better in the regular season. Like I think what we've seen the last 2 weeks is probably the ceiling as far as what we should expect going into the regular season. And hey, if we get that every game, I mean, from what we've seen from the first team defense, I'm cool with it because they've looked great. And obviously the focus needs to be on the offense putting up points. Because if you hold, the Steelers to 7 points in the first half, and let's assume, maybe 10 points in the second half, you should be able to win a game allowing 17 points. Like, especially with the weapons, even though they might not be superstars, but a lot of the names we have on offense with Christian Kirk and James Robinson's return, 20 to 17 ball games are winnable games for the Jags.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so the Bills defense was super good last year, and those games are decided by who scored last. It doesn't matter if your defense is, the best in the league. If you don't have an offense that's gonna, come back in the fourth quarter and put up the final points, I don't think in this league, in this day and age, you're not gonna win many games that way. I mean, you might win some, but I don't know. The 2017 Jags, where the offense was pretty stagnant, or not stagnant, but the offense was average and the defense was elite. I don't think that. I don't know if that's going to fly in this and against the Chiefs, Bills, and all these powerhouse AFC teams at the top. So that's what I'm saying. Let's get more out of Trevor Lawrence. Let's expect more from this guy. He's the number one pick. I want to see him launching it down the field. I mean, have you seen any just cannons down the field? I've seen the one throw to Zay Jones, everyone's creaming over, but where's the launch codes? Let's dial them up and let's go yard. I haven't seen it yet, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll see come regular week 1 against the Commanders.
I will say Christian Kirk did come out and say they've barely opened up any of the playbook.
Right.
Which I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing based on, is it a good thing because there's plenty more to come during the regular season, or is it a bad thing because the offense hasn't caught on yet to the schemes in the play calling? So it makes me wonder if, all right, why is it not being opened up? I guess they're just trying to protect some of the looks. But speaking of Christian Kirk, we saw him play against the Steelers, had a pretty decent game as well. What did you guys think of the Christian Kirk sighting in the game against the Steelers?
I was pretty impressed with the contested catches, to be honest.
He 5 catches for 54 yards.
He had some plays where he was wide open, but some of those throws were with a guy blanketed on him, and he really muscled out those receptions, and I liked that because he hasn't been playing in a couple games, or I mean he missed the first game, but he's coming back from a little bit of a nick, but we need that toughness.
It was eight targets, Sam. 5 catches on 8 targets. So obviously Lawrence likes going to him.
I mean, that's in one half of football too. He's on target for 16 targets in the game. He was feeding him the ball, you can tell, and wanted to get him back in the rhythm. But he definitely looked good. That's for sure.
I will say Lawrence 14 completions on 21 attempts for 133 yards. 7 incompletions. Okay, so 66% completion percentage there. But I'll be blatantly honest again. And there were some misses that Trevor had that just were unexcusable or inexcusable. Excuse me. Trevor Lawrence needs to connect on some. He easily should have been 17 for 21. There were a lot of passes that were overthrown, a lot of passes that were out of reach. And as much as we do want to blame drops or, tight coverage, which, sometimes you can't avoid, there were about 3 or 4 incompletions he had that should have been easy catches. And sitting next to my dad during a Jaguars game, we all know how vocal he can be. He was getting pretty riled up about some of the incompletions against the Steelers that Trevor Lawrence had, because at this point, you expect him to make these certain passes completed. You expect more from him. Maybe you're not expecting the home run plays that we all want to see, but you're expecting him to connect on a 7-yard out route and not, airmail it 5 yards into the sideline.
Agreed.
Yeah, I
It's
totally
just
agree. And
a
that's the thing with Christian Kirk. I think, the negative side is, yes, Trevor kind of overthrew a couple balls, I think, right in front of where we were sitting, on our sideline. But then the positive is like, okay, Christian Kirk ran a route. They got him open with space, and we expected that to be, completed. And we were like, okay, what'd you do that for, Trevor? But like the fact that I'm seeing receivers get open, I'm looking forward to thinking, okay, Trevor wasn't like terribly inaccurate last year, so maybe this has to do with installing a new offense, having new timing, just different reads. I don't know, but I believe Trevor will get those things figured out, and seeing Christian Kirk and even Zay Jones, just getting that open space, that's something we've rarely seen in Jacksonville. I feel like everything we've had with receivers, the best receiver in recent years, Allen Robinson, was a contested catch king, and that's not the way you want to have to go about it, so hopefully Trevor gets everything back in line and hits Kirk on those, and then Kirk turns it to a lot of, yards down the field.
Ultimately, I'm just excited to see all of the starting weapons on the field at the same time in a meaningful game, because right now I feel like 60% of what we are able to talk about is all speculation based on, who's on the field for the other team, who we have on the field, if all of the starting pieces with the chemistry and stuff. So I'm just ready for 2 weeks from now when we can talk meaningful football. So
Yeah, I mean, if you take a look at all the stats, it was basically like the Jaguars were in the control of the game. And I would argue that most of you would be pretty excited if you looked at the stat sheet and saw that we led most of the stats. You'd all be pretty excited. Of course, we lost by 1 at the very end, and that's from our kicker he got cut. We got some new players that came in recently. We claimed a kicker off of the waiver wire from the Chargers, James McCourt. I think he was 37 of 52 from 50-plus yards. So he's decently accurate from long distance. Hopefully he can correct some of those field goal misses we had. And we also picked up a offensive lineman from the Packers. We traded a 7th-rounder for next year for this offensive lineman, Cole Van Lanen. He played 71 snaps already this preseason at left guard. And according to PFF, he's had 0 QB pressures in that time frame. So if he can keep that performance up, that's a good addition for a 7th-round pick that probably won't see the field, honestly.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, Ryan Santoso, I felt like any kicker was going to be a long shot to make the team given the reports coming out of camp. And if there's one thing that you can take out of training camp that you feel is pretty accurate, it's probably kicking statistics, because not much is changing. So if you're missing 45 yarders by 10 yards to the right, like that's what you should expect in the game. So it's not a surprise there. But James McCourt, I've literally never heard of this guy. Have any of you heard of this guy?
No, not at all.
No.
So I'm a little quiet about it because I have no idea.
Well, no, and we just talked about the offense struggling within the red zone. The kicker might be the most important position for this team, given what we've seen from the offense in the red zone. Like, you can't understate how valuable a kicker is, especially on an offense that can't convert inside the 20.
I think that's the thing. You don't necessarily want a kicker that, okay, he's going to win us all these games because he's going to make these crazy long field goals, but you don't want that guy that's also going to lose you games for not making what you see as routine. We need to get into field goal range, and if we don't convert, we need to kick a field goal and convert that way. And if we're not making those, we may not need the guy kicking 55 to 60 yarders, but we want the guy at least kicking the 34, plus yarders through. I mean, I don't want to lose games. I'd rather convert and hope our offense is scoring touchdowns anyway.
Yeah.
All right, here's a blurb on James McCourt. He went to the University of Illinois, holds the school record for most 50-plus yard field goals. That was at Illinois, though. He had only had 8 there, so, I mean, that's not a whole lot. And then he was 37 of 52 during his college career. So, I mean, at that point, why not have Matthew Wright in there? What happened to him? He was very consistent from within the 40-yard line. Maybe he doesn't have the leg to get the long ones, but he was.
But then he made some of the long ones last year. I mean,
that's what I'm saying.
Right.
What was the Miami one?
I got a theory. All right. So we all talk about. This is a good one right here. I just came up with. All these kickers we've been bringing in are all specialists at the 50-plus yarders. You know, we were just talking about how aggressive Doug Peterson is. Maybe they're not planning to fucking kick many field goals from 30, 25-yarder. Once we get down in there, we're going for it on every fourth down, kind of like these other teams in the league have been doing. That Doug Peterson was like one of the first guys, to bring that, aggressive mentality. And now everyone in the league is, all these, Chargers, all these teams are doing it. So it's like, okay, maybe there's something here. Maybe Matthew Wright isn't going to cut it from the what we're going to be asking this guy to do, which is, if we're middle of the field, we're going to try and kick a field goal. We want you to be able to at least get there, So
I don't hate that theory.
You like that?
I actually love that theory.
Right.
I mean, I really think Doug Peterson's one of the more aggressive coaches. I think he's willing to take those chances because if you have good offensive play calling and good confidence in that, 4th and 3, 4th and 2, we should have a play whipped up for that, any NFL team should.
Let's keep the ball in Trevor's hands, right?
You know what's so funny about your theory, Sam, is you literally just described a 4-man golf scramble in football terms where it's your buddy might not be the best golfer at all, but he sinks every 15-foot putt and in. So you want him on your team when you're going out to play. They don't care about any other statistic except his accuracy outside 40 yards. 40 to 50 yards, bring him in here, maybe even going for 2. That's another thing too, is the field goal being pushed back, to 37 yards from whatever it was, 25 yards or 19 yards, I think it was actually. So now it's back to 37 yards. Maybe that ties into the theory of maybe more 2-point conversions, pulling out the Philly special to try and get some 2-point conversions during the season could be an interesting tactic. And hey, last time we got a kicker from the Chargers, he turned out to be a pretty good kicker in Josh Lambo. So maybe there's a little pipeline there from San Diego or LA now to Jacksonville with good kickers.
Let's do it.
I will say it is funny though. If you look at this guy, James McCourt, he's got the mustache going and he's got kind of some of the curly brown hair going. He's got a little Shad Khan resemblance to him, and he went to University of Illinois, and that's Shad Khan's favorite team, being from the Chicago Champaign area. So I wonder if his son Tony knew about James McCourt. So I guess we'll find out about him. And just to hit on the offensive lineman real quick, we don't need to exhaust ourselves on this because who knows how often we'll see him. Hopefully never with the starting 5 we have, that if we think they're good. But this guy, Cole Van Lanen, I do think it's interesting timing for the trade. One, you don't often see trades this close to the regular season, but cuts are currently happening. So teams had to get down to 80 players yesterday and 53 players by August 30th. So the Jaguars must really like this guy if they didn't want him to hit the waiver wire, because most teams can go pick up guys that they want from other teams off the waiver wire once cuts happen. But obviously this team saw something in this guy that they didn't even want him to touch the waiver wire, so they made the trade. So maybe the Jags know more than we think as far as offensive line goes.
Did we mention, this is going back to the kicker, did we mention this dude's Irish?
Irish born, yeah.
I'm looking at Twitter, and do we say that, though? It's apparently there's Twitter accounts that are Irish, waiting for the first active Irish NFL player in 37 years. So I didn't know that was a thing. Apparently.
His name's McCourty.
But I'm
big M, little C. It's
yeah, but I mean, you still don't think. I mean, how many people born in America have names from overseas? But apparently, people are watching him, trying to hope an Irish NFL player active NFL player.
Like he's an actual Irish-born player, not just like ties to Ireland family name.
Yeah, I mean, like what? Half the country's last name is probably like of Irish descent.
Last blurb on how important an accurate kicker is. The Bengals wouldn't be in the Super Bowl without theirs. The man went up there and he said, well, looks like we're going to the Super Bowl, boys, and hits a game winner. That's how important it is to have a really good field goal kicker.
I love it.
Matty
yeah.
Ice.
You sold it to me. Any other storylines around the NFL going on that we should touch on before we call it an evening?
I will say if you're a fan of a certain show called The Masked Singer, either tune in to this next part or completely zone out, because if you don't like spoilers, I don't know if this is one. But Tom Brady showed up at camp today, or not today, but was it today? Yesterday? I don't know at the time.
I think it was the 23rd, August 23rd.
Oh, when you hear this podcast, it might not be today, but it was today for us. But there's been a theory that he hasn't been at practice because he potentially is going to be on the upcoming season of The Masked Singer. I don't know how likely that is. If it's true, I personally am going to be so annoyed because I love that show. But you know, they were putting some pieces together. Like he's not at camp, lines up with the timing of the show. He was retiring, was going to have a job with Fox where The Masked Singer is aired. Maybe they had plans, and maybe when he unretired, he was like, "Oh, I'm already doing this." So like when he came back, he wasn't expecting to be in camp at this time. So I just want to say, if you're a fan of the show, or if not, maybe tune in and see if one of these upcoming Masked Singers is Tom Brady, because the dude's been a lot more fun ever since he left New England. That's all I'm saying.
Fair enough.
That's all I'm saying.
That last part might be the best thing you just said.
It's true. I think I did not realize how much of a hold Bill Belichick probably had on that guy. We assumed they were cut from the same cloth. But ever since he's been in Tampa, living in Florida, this guy is fun city. So
he's a fun guy. Sam,
pop culture for you.
Pop culture on the Poojie podcast. Yeah. Sam, Luke, do you guys watch The Masked Singer at all?
If you weren't watching The Masked Singer to begin with, I'd highly doubt that Tom Brady's potential to be on there is going to get them any more views. But I mean, people who like football will fucking watch anything. So
Gronkowski was on it. He was on it like 4 seasons ago.
Yeah, but
he probably said you should get up on that, Tom.
Does anyone else know that except for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's why I'm the one dropping the news, and I'm sure there's plenty of Masked Singer fans.
Sam, The Masked Singer is a lot more popular than you're giving it credit for.
I think they're about to be on, season 7? If it wasn't popular, they wouldn't have made this many seasons.
Luke, do you watch it at all? Have you seen it?
The only thing I watch on TV is football. So everything else is all streaming services. So
football guy of the week.
It's like, other than that, everything's on streaming services, and you can.
Yeah, you watching Pigskin? Nah. You watching Hard Knocks, bro?
Oh yeah, Hard Knocks is so good.
I'm about to fucking put that on right after the podcast.
What kind of hype do you put on in fantasy for any team that's in Hard Knocks? Because immediately, like every year, like, oh, this guy looks amazing, and they're on the fucking Lions. They're not going to be that great, but everyone's pumping up like Amon St. Ra or whatever.
Megatron out there. Do you see that?
How about Pimpleton, dude? Pimpleton, Maction, product of Central Michigan. I remember having him in my FanDuels.
Tuesday night Maction. He was a Pee-wee player out there with how big that jersey was.
Dude, Tuesday night FanDuels, Maction, it would be like CMU versus Northern Illinois, and I would just take Pimpleton and then the best receiver on Northern Illinois, because they would be shootouts. They would be like 56-49, just shootouts, and Pimpleton was just amazing. It was fun to watch. I will say this, though, about Hard Knocks. Any concern about DeAndre Swift's fantasy stock, considering HBO just seems to love Jamal Williams and making it seem like DeAndre Swift is not even a running back on the Detroit Lions?
No. Yeah, go ahead and let him drop in fantasy if that's what you're trying to do right now.
Yeah,
I literally said it to Matt last night, and I said they have the camera on Jamal Williams so much it's made me forget that he's the RB2 in Detroit. You'll see it. You're watching last night's episode tonight, Sam.
Yeah, so no spoilers.
No, but you'll see what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but I think Jamal Williams is just more of an entertaining guy. So for this series, it's just a better person to put on there. But you saw in the first episode, the coach was really hyping up DeAndre Swift, so I think it shouldn't really affect anything. DJ Chark has barely made an appearance, and then you haven't even seen JMO. So,
I mean, I would like to think whoever is editing these episodes probably plays fantasy football themselves. So, of course, they're not going to hype up the actual guy they want to pick. They're going to be like, let's just hype up the RB2. So everybody lets DeAndre Swift drop. Don't tell me these people editing this show don't play. This is strategic. I believe it. That's what I would do. Oh my gosh, dude, the fourth string is crazy. He's going to be the number one by the time camp comes or season comes.
The ultimate 200.
Luke, you said JMO?
Jameson Williams.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I had that right. Yeah,
he hasn't been on it once.
True.
Crazy.
So, hey there,
also, real quick, Jacob, prediction: if Tom Brady is on The Masked Singer, what do you think he's dressed as?
Dang, that's a great question.
I can come back to you. I'm just going to say this. I say a raccoon for zero reasons other than I don't know if there's ever been a raccoon on there. And when I first heard that there was a potential, that was the first thing that came to mind. So that's what I went with.
Damn.
I have no idea. I think only Todd Bowles knows if he was actually on The Masked Singer or not. He might be the only.
It's not just animals. It's like they do all sorts of things now.
I might have to tune in, guys. This is too exciting. I can't.
Sam, Lil Wayne was on The Masked Singer as a robot.
Lil Wayne.
Yeah,
I was not able to tell it was freaking Lil Wayne.
Bro, he was the most obvious one, I think.
Yeah,
he was very obvious.
All
right, well, let's close it out with this. Baker Mayfield starter in Carolina. That's not big news, but let's start it off. Let's finish it off with pour one out. Shaquem Griffin hanging up the cleats after a 4-year NFL career and a fantastic career at UCF. Obviously, anyone that follows football knows who Shaquem Griffin is. He was integral part of UCF's undefeated season in 2017. Got drafted by the Seahawks out of UCF. Player with only one hand, twin brother to Shaquille Griffin. But really just a fantastic story of him making it to the NFL, getting drafted. And he made it 4 years under contract. So I think he earned his pension and everything else. So he's calling it quits and he's moving on to other endeavors. So
great player, great story. I mean, if you're out there playing at the elite level with one hand, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I think it's just a big one of the best stories of just like, no excuses, nothing, no limits, like no matter what you have, like if he could do it with one hand, I mean, how many players with their excuses with, everything else going on? But I'm not going to lie to you. When I first saw the news, I had half a heart attack because like Shaquille, whatever, I'm like, oh my God, did something just break that Shaquille Griffin? And I almost just freaked out, but
you get an NFL notification, Griffin retires, and you're like, what?
Well, Shaquille sat last game, and I was like, oh my God, what just happened? But still,
if Shaquille Griffin retires, I will gladly break the news. I may be one of the first to know with my inside sources that I have. So, with Shaquille Griffin. But anything else from you guys before we call it an evening? All set.
Good.
All righty, awesome, guys. Well, I appreciate it. Everyone tuning in. Thank you again for tuning in. As always, a fun time with the Poojie podcast. Episode 132 is in the books. If you're watching on YouTube, Luke, show the hat. There you go. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you. Please subscribe, like the video, comment. If you're watching on YouTube but you want to listen elsewhere, if you're at the gym or in the car on the way to work, go find us on Spotify, Apple, iHeart, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, and just tell your friends about us because they'd probably like us too. So thank you for listening. Go enjoy the rest of your week and go enjoy the final week of the preseason and week 0 of college football coming up. I would recommend taking Hawaii against the spread at +8.5 against Vanderbilt. They've covered 11 of their last 12. Week 0 or week 1 against the spreads at home. So go ahead and hammer Hawaii. You're probably wondering how I know that information. But I do. So go enjoy some college football and preseason week 3. But most importantly, as always, Go make this world a better place.